Welcome back to my workshop. Now this is a follow-up video regarding this pile of stuff that I made last video. Now what is it? Now this is a Makita DUH523 hedge trimmer. Okay, this wasn't working. If you want the full story, watch the previous video, which is here, and I showed you how I diagnosed this, and I come to the conclusion that the motor was broken. Okay, so what I've done now is I've now received a new motor in the post. What I'm going to do now is show you how to reassemble it and then test it, and hopefully it's going to work. Let's make a start. Right, so a good place to start would be to check to make sure the motor I've received is the same as this one. Okay, that's the one out of the original machine, and here's the one that I've received. Just get it out of the package. First appearance, yeah, that looks pretty similar. Okay, yeah, so just basically checking on the original one here, it's got a little red dot which shows which is the positive. This is the same on here. Okay, it's got the bearing attached already. Just to be sure, let's check to make sure that bearing's the same size. Looks like it is. Okay, so this is the original motor. Check the bearing here. 26 mil, just over 26 mil. Okay, and the new motor, yeah, that looks okay. Depth of the new bearing, 7.8. Depth of the old one, which I'm assuming is going to be the same, 7.8. Okay, we're good. Okay, that's excellent. Now what I've got to do is make sure I don't put the wrong one in. This is the new one, this is the old one. Because they've got magnets in them, they keep on trying to stick together. Right, let's check this new motor and see if it's different than that one electrically. Okay, you wouldn't normally need to do this, but because I'm showing you on video and they're both very similar, I'm going to just quickly write on this one that this is the old one, so I don't get them mixed up. Okay, that's just for me. Right, if you've watched the previous video, basically checking this motor out, what I did was check the continuity across the terminals. Okay, so this is the old motor. Now I've checked the continuity across the terminals and I was expecting a very low reading. But on this one, okay, I got OL, which is open load, which means that's a complete open circuit. So what I'm hoping is on the new motor, which is this one here, I should have a very, very low resistance. Okay, so doing exactly the same thing across the two terminals, 0.5. Okay, so I know there's actually a circuit across there. In addition, with the old motor, one of the other checks I did, I put this onto volts DC. I connected my terminals like this. I attempted to spin it. Okay, and I was hoping to get a voltage, but I was getting nothing. Okay, this is only because it's a DC motor. I should be able to generate something. So let's try that with the new motor. Same again, connected on here, connected on here, still on volts DC. So if I spin it, yeah, we're now getting a small pulse of charge. Yeah, so I'm happy with that. Size is the same. The function appears correct. So what we're going to do now is refit it. If I can get the bearing back on. Here we go. Right, the first stage to refitting it. What we've got to do is fit this little plate here. Now this is the bearing holder. Okay, literally that should just slot into here. This is why we checked to make sure the bearing was the right size. Now don't force this on, because if you go on a bit on the wonky, you'll never get it off again. Okay, so just basically ease it on if we can. As soon as it starts tipping, you've had it. You shouldn't have to press this in. You should just push in by hand, which it does. Okay, and then if you look at the top here, you can see that the bearing is seated properly on the bottom of this. If that's not seated properly, you won't be able to fit it back. Okay, right, now this has to go into here. Right, so the motor sits here. If you see the previous video, you'll see exactly how it fitted. First thing to do is connect the electrical connections. As I mentioned, on the back of the motor here, you've got a little red dot, which is signifying that this is the positive terminal. Okay, and this one is obviously the ground. So positive is the red, so we connect that wire. Negative is the black, so we connect that wire. Okay, you'll notice that we haven't got the battery connected at the moment because that would be a really bad thing to do. Then this slots in there. Simple as that. That was easy, wasn't it? All right, make sure that this control panel here is located properly. And that's how the motor is actually in. The next thing we've got to do is refit this cover. Make sure there's nothing in here that shouldn't be there. It's quite greasy, so it's possible you could have picked up a screw or something stuck in here. That literally just fits over the top, like that. Remembering I mentioned before that there's a little rubber grommet there which you move out of the way and it hooks back over. Make sure it's seated properly here, here and here. Okay, the plate's in there. It's all good. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws, which we've kept in on a nice little tray here. Let's screw those in. Right, at this point what we could do is we could put the battery on and then we could try it see if the actual motor spins up, but I'm fairly confident it's going to work. So what I'm going to do is continue with putting this mechanical gearing back together. If you remember, oh, this was greasy. Okay, we had this main gear, the dish side, this one went in, making sure our washer is on here. Okay. And that literally should just pop in there and it should mesh with that gear here. Okay, so that's in and that's greasy. Right, next is the actual bar. Okay, so that sits on here and screws in with these 4. So let's wipe my fingers and then we'll do that. Right, so this is the main cutting blade that I'm putting back on now. Okay, I managed to leave the case on there. There's no need to take it off. Now this obviously has got to mount onto this gearing here. Okay, if you look on the back, there's 2 little lugs. Okay, they have got to align with the 2 little holes in this gearing. Okay, if you just try and force it on, it's never going to go on. Okay, so let's get those aligned and get that screwed in. Right, so that's those 4 screws in there nice and tight. This is all flat. If you noticed, I was keeping my thumb on this because there's a little spacer washer here which we don't want to lose. Okay, that's all good. Next bit is to fit this cover. Okay, it's got grease in it. You could actually take some of the grease and just pop it in the end there. Okay, then this should just go on. Like that. 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, the screws that hold this in are these short, dumpy machine screws. Okay, so there's that cover on. Now, inside we've got 2 grommets to put on here. Okay, these are these yellow fellas. And I said that the pointy side goes down. So there's one there and one there. Now, if you remember, I took out the trigger because I didn't want to lose the little spring. Okay, this little spring. So trigger goes back in here, like that. Right, so that's all the internals back together. Make sure that the switches are seated. Make sure that everything is not come out of position. Make sure the grommets are in place. Okay, and the next thing is to obviously put this cover back on. Should be just a case of slipping it over like that, which is easy enough. I used this as a guide to slide it into the right position. And then we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 screws. Okay, this one's just a hole. And remembering that this one was a big long one which went across the front. Okay, tighten those up. Once you've tightened up your screws, make sure you check the seam here, okay? All the way around here and across the back here and across where the battery sits, just to make sure there's no gaps in the plastic. If there's gaps in the plastic, the chances are you've trapped something like a wire or something like that, okay? Which is not a good thing. If you've got gaps, take it off again, check to make sure your connection is going to be okay, and then try and reassemble it. Okay, these are all now tight. The next thing to go on is the handle. Okay, as I mentioned in a previous video, these things are assembled on an assembly line, so they need to be assembled quickly. So I'm imagining that this is easy to fit. Okay, remembering that the actual trigger part here is towards the operator. Okay, don't try and fit it this way. It goes towards the operator. Now, in theory, this should just be a case of sliding it underneath, locating those lugs, okay, and then it should pull into position. There you go. That's good engineering. Okay, 2 screws, one this side here and one here. Let's put those in. Okay, the screws that hold the handle on are these ones, okay, quite long. Let's get those in place. Right, we're rapidly running out of screws. We've got 2 screws left here. And we've got 1 piece of plastic left, which is the actual shield. Now this goes on the front here. So it should just be the 2 screws. Let's turn it upside down. Okay, we've got these little lugs here, which they fit onto. Then a screw goes in either side. One in this side. Then one in this side. Right, we appear to have run out of screws, which means we must be nearly there. All that remains to do is plug the battery back in and see if it works. Okay, let's get myself somewhere safe. Okay, let's fit the battery. Make sure it's located properly. I've got to take this cover off because I don't know what's going to happen. Okay, final check to make sure everything's okay. Pull the trigger, pull the other trigger. Yay! Well, that works. So that's it, it's all back together. We've checked it works. Just one final check to do. Make sure that it only works when you've got both triggers pulled. Okay, so pulling this one doesn't work. Pulling this one doesn't work. Okay, make sure both of them pressed, it actually functions. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is get this back to its owner and then he can carry on and do his gardening. Right. Hopefully that was helpful for you, that video. Thank you very much for watching. So if you've got a Makita DUH523 hedge trimmer and it doesn't work, the chances are, if you follow that process, you might find out it's the motor. You can replace the motor and you don't have to buy a new one. Right, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Right, we're rapidly, let's try again. Right, that's about it for today. What I'm going to do now is get this back to its owner, if I can get it back together. Pull the trigger, pull the other trigger. I'm in signal.